Welcome everybody to the Bradenton Blitz. I am Jason Dill and I'm joined by David Wilson here at the Bradenton Herald. And David, let's talk about some playoff implications that are going to be happening this week. As we look back on our whiteboard back here, we have Class 8A District 6. It's already been wrapped up by Manatee, but District 11 in Class 7A is kind of still up for grabs. Braden River won the district last week against Palmetto in a very convincing fashion, but Palmetto has work to do against Venice this week, which is going to determine the district runner-up.
Yeah, Palmetto a trip down to Venice after that 35-0 loss to Braden River. Venice lost 30-20 to Braden River. Winner gets the second playoff spot in that district. We kind of knew it was going to come down to these last few weeks. It's a tough trip for Palmetto, especially against a really good Braden River Venice defensive line.
Now let's go over here, over your shoulder. We have Class 5A District 11. That's the most complicated one out of the three, out of all the ones that we have up here on the whiteboard. Southeast, Hardy, and Lemon Bay. Southeast did something incredible last week, going to Wauchula to beat Hardy and the Wildcats. Kind of sets up this situation that we have here now. So if Southeast wins, let's go through what we have for the scenarios. They all have one loss in the district. So if they all have the same identical district record after this week,
whether they all win or they all lose,
we're going to a district tiebreaker on Monday, which hasn't happened in Manatee County since 2008. It's been a very long time that we've had a county team get to a district tiebreaker scenario. Incidentally, it was Southeast back in 2008. So the Seminoles and Hardy and Lemon Bay, depending on what happens, but they're all playing the bottom half of the district this week. Lemon Bay gets Bayshore at home. You figure that's probably going to be a win.
Right.
Hardy's also at home against a very woeful Arcadia DeSoto team. You expect that to be a victory for the Wildcats. Southeast probably has the hardest of the road this week because they have to go on the road and they have to play a Sarasota Booker team that barely lost to Lemon Bay last week by a point. So Booker is kind of in that middle ground of that district despite having 3 district losses. So probably more tough for Southeast to get there.
Yeah. My hunch is they're all going to win and we'll see a district tiebreaker, which will happen Monday. But yeah, I agree. Southeast has the toughest trip by virtue of having a trip. But I think they should be able to take care of business.
And let's just reiterate, the district tiebreaker will be at the team with the best record. If they all have to go to district tiebreaker with the same record, overall record comes into play as determining who the number 1 seed is and who it hosts. And in this case, it would be Lemon Bay. They have the best overall record going into this week, which they still would have. That kind of plays against a team like Southeast, which front-loaded their schedule with teams with very good records like Palmetto and Braden River and Nature Coast, which they all got beat by.
Yes.
Okay, so then we have 3A5, which is Cardinal Mooney, and has to go to Clearwater Central Catholic. I'm not expecting the Cougars to win. I don't think you are either. They've already wrapped up a district playoff berth, but they're playing for the district championship this week. We're expecting them to get a runner-up spot by not winning that game, correct?
Yeah, I mean, CCC's, the class of that district has been, it's not an easy trip for Cardinal Mooney, which hasn't been particularly good other than its couple district games it's won.
What have you seen coming into last week? I just want to ask you because I got the chance to see the Palmetto Braden River game, which Braden River won their back-to-back district titles. Manatee also clinched their district title in convincing fashion as well. Braden River was just explosive that game. They just took care of the ball offensively, drove down the field right away to score a touchdown. Then they held Palmetto's offense in check with their defensive line, and their offensive line did a number as well to move them forward. What did you see during practice last week where Palmetto maybe didn't have it going into that game? I mean, it seemed like they probably were prepared and ready, but it just didn't execute on it.
Yeah, they felt really good about their week leading into practice. Xavier Smith, who had been practicing for a few weeks, was full go, ready for the game. He didn't do much in his first game back since getting injured against Sarasota. I think in the end, you touched on this when we were talking just leading up to the game. Palmetto probably had the edge in the skill players, but Braden River had a huge edge in the trenches. They have a giant offensive line, some Division I guys on it. And that's, I think, going to be the same issue against Venice, which more on the defensive line, they have their size. But Palmetto is just small up front. Not that they're not good linemen, but they're just undersized. And you need to have blocking to let your skill guys do anything. All
right, so let's go through it. Palmetto, Venice, who wins?
I think Venice.
I think Venice as well. Southeast, Booker.
Southeast.
Okay, I like Southeast. Mooney and CCC, we already made our picks there.
CCC.
St. Stephen's is also in a playoff game.
Yes.
They have to go to Lecanto to play Seven Rivers Christian. that Seven Rivers Christian team hasn't lost a game this year. I'm thinking they're going to win, especially with a long road trip.
Yeah, it's a long trip. It's really tough to tell in that conference where they don't really play other teams from the other divisions. It's big divisions, so you don't get to see them against outside competition much. But as good as St. Stephen's offense has been, it's a tough trip, and I'll take Seven Rivers.
Manatee, big win last week to get to another district championship. The Hurricanes will have a home playoff game, just like Braden River will. Both of those teams are back in action. Manatee's at home against Lithia Newsom to wrap up district play. I like the Hurricanes in a walk.
I'll take Manatee.
I like Braden River in a walk going down to Sarasota. It might be a little bit of gray area because we don't know the certainty of Raymond Thomas, who suffered a pretty big injury.
And they'll be cautious with guys just in general. Same goes for Manatee.
Right, exactly. So you expect them, but I still think they're still going to have a lot of talent to kind of win the game. And it doesn't really matter what happens with either of those two teams. The only thing they're worried about coming in these last 2 weeks is being healthy and getting ready for the playoffs. Lakewood Ranch at Northport, I expect the Mustangs to get a much-needed win late in the year against the Bobcats.
I agree.
And Bayshore could pose problems with their defense against Lemon Bay, but I still think Lemon Bay at home is going to win that game, as we talked about already.
Yeah, their offense is still a work in progress. They've got a sophomore quarterback who's been impressive in spots this year, but I don't expect them to win.
And moving down to Class 2A, ODA, which has already been eliminated from playoff contention. They have to go to Seffner to play Seffner Christian. I expect Seffner Christian to win that game.
Yeah, I'll take Seffner there also.
And Bradenton Christian at home against Fort Myers Canterbury. I actually expect BCS to pull out a W late in the year here.
Yeah, their offense has been pretty good, and I know they only scored 8 points last week, but it was against a good team. Their offense is good enough to score with teams that aren't necessarily the elites.
Last week you got to see IMG and facing Rashawn Gary at Paramus Catholic, nationally televised game on ESPN. Tony Jones had a huge run that made ESPN's SportsCenter's top 10 list. They have to go to Maryland and play Eastern Christian. Well, actually, they're playing at Delaware State, but they have to go play a team from there. I still expect IMG to be prohibitive favorites in that one to win.
Yeah,
and that's on Saturday.
I agree. Shea Patterson wasn't great, but it was against probably one of the best defensive lines in the entire country.
Well, until next week, this is Jason Dill.
I'm David Wilson.
And we'll catch you on the flip side.